Welcome, it's Dadhichi here. It's July 2017. Thanks for joining me, folks. There's a lot of misinformation going around, and I was just looking at the chart, trying to sort of get a handle on what exactly it is that is, creating all this lack of trust in media, in the news, in a lot of the different information services that we have. And I observed that Neptune, which is now in its own sign of Pisces, is of course what we call domicile, or in its own sign, and I guess functioning in its best manner there, being in its own sign. Neptune, of course, apart from being an extremely spiritual planet, is notorious for, bending and stretching the truth considerably. And communication is ruled by Gemini. So I took a look and I saw that, Neptune is smack bang in the middle of the sign of Pisces, in a square aspect. That's a 90-degree right-angled aspect to Mercury's sign, Gemini, which is the sign of communication, thinking, information, news, that type of thing. So that would account to some extent for the misinformation, or can I use the word lies, that we are seeing, abounding in the news and across the planet. But how do you get around that? What is it that you're supposed to believe, I guess, is the question. This is where, apart from doing some research on Google, it's important to develop your intuition. You've got to have that gut feeling, that sense of, well, this makes sense, or no, it doesn't make sense. And between the two, doing your research and leaning in on your intuition a little bit more, hopefully you'll come to a clearer understanding of what's going on. We also see that from the other side of Gemini, the North Node, the shadowy point in the zodiac, exited Virgo recently. And so while it was in Virgo, it was also in the right angle. That's for about 18 months. It's now easing up. I don't think the misinformation has eased up, but that is also the square sign of Gemini, and it is also the other sign of Mercury. So both of those signs are involved in this particular, what we'd call a T-square. So we had, probably earlier last year, the opposition to Neptune from the node, and both of those planets in opposition forming a T-square with the sign of Gemini, which is indeed very challenging, very difficult, and may account for some of the misinformation that we're talking about here. The other thing that we might look at there is the slow transit, and now the current retrograde movement of Saturn through the noble sign of Sagittarius, which is not necessarily the sign of the zodiac relating to information, but it is higher knowledge, it is ethics, morality, that type of thing. That is in the opposite sign to Gemini, and that has been for the last year or two. So what we see there is really, it's still opposite, a very loose grand cross between these planets, Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node, but technically no planet at the moment in the sign of Gemini. I'm just using Gemini as that fourth point, which would create that grand cross. There is a T-square right now, a passing T-square that is formed between, about a year ago, between Saturn, Neptune and the node. Node now is actually moving into a better position with Saturn. So we would hope that some of the misinformation might settle down a little bit. We may have better tools for understanding, what is real and what is fake. And one of the best tools, as I've just said, is your own intuition. If you can lean in on that and use that, then I think you'll start to be able to sift through a lot of the nonsense that we're seeing there. The bigger problem to this, and I've mentioned this for a long time, is the transit of Pluto through Capricorn, which is really generating a grassroots, it's almost like a global revolt against the powers that are ruling us. In fact, some countries such as Russia. Now, is this misinformation? I don't know, but I've read, and I may really need to check that before going out on a limb, have decided to get rid of the Rothschilds bank in Russia. So, these banking families, these larger organizations, wealthy individuals who are basically pulling the strings financially, have a big say in the way politics runs. And astrology is also showing that the transformative power of Pluto through the sign of Capricorn is indeed a very powerful one. We do have a pretty intense Mars opposition Pluto taking place. Mars in the debilitation sign of Cancer, which is why we may be able to account for the uprise in terrorist attacks, which is shocking in London. And, that's probably going to continue because Pluto has a long way to go yet. It's only at about 18 degrees retrograde in Capricorn, showing the big change and transformation that we are seeing now in politics worldwide. I didn't really set out to talk about politics. I really wanted to talk more about leaning in on your intuition, using that gut feeling of yours to sift through not just this political BS, the news BS, all that spin, but just in dealing with your one-on-one relationship, relying on that and using what we call non-verbal cues to understand what people are saying to you, because it's through those non-verbal cues, through the non-verbal language, the body language, the nuances of the face, that you're going to get a better insight into what people actually mean. Don't look so much at the words, but the space between the words. I'm going to get on now to the 12 signs. Today we're going to try something a little bit different. I want to use the horoscope and show you exactly what I'm doing, because it's easy to talk and people think, well, does he really know anything about astrology? A little bit. But I want to show you in chart form what's actually happening, and I look forward to you joining me there. Take care. Bye-bye.